What's up, my friends? Jason Woodland back again with Always the Journey TV. Today we are representing episode number 58. So thank you again so much for tuning in. We finally got our subscribe button figured out, and I think it's in the bottom left-hand corner. So anyway, we would love for you to subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. The whole reason for this TV channel / podcast is to spotlight amazing people out here in our community, to learn more about their businesses, their history, their jobs, their music, their art, their side hustles, and everything in between. Today, I'm extremely excited about introducing to you a very dear friend, Jon Absey. Jon is in a class all his own. Dating back to his first season in Utah, he performed at over 900 NBA games, has donated 16,000 plus hours of assistance in the community for more than 300 community organizations, and raised more than $1 million for charity in the process. Jon has taken home more than 40 community and national awards, including 8 Mascot Leadership Awards, keys to 2 cities, been honored by 3 individual governors for his very own day in Utah, been named Mascot of the Year in the NBA 5 times, and Best Mascot out of all sports nationwide twice, and just recently was given an award for the best video by Mascot out of all sports nationwide. He has been inducted into the YMCA Hall of Fame, the Utah Summer Games Hall of Fame, and the Mascot Hall of Fame in 2006. He says, "The reason the character grew to be such a big part of the community was because of the help I had from everyone around me. Without the help from people who cared, it wouldn't have been just as successful." Jon is ever so grateful for the understanding of his wife and children and the fact that they let him build this character, even though it took him away from his home way too much. Behind the suit has always been a supportive and proud family. Without them, he said, he would have just been an ordinary bear. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce to you my very dear friend, Jon Absey, the very first and original Utah Jazz Bear. What's up, brother?
Yay! How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing phenomenal. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. That was one heck of a intro right there. I will Venmo you about $20. How's that?
Done and done. I can go get a pizza after this.
That was awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's so good to see your smiling face. You're always such a positive and energetic figure out here in the community, and I love it.
Oh, thank you. You too, man. I'm just following your footsteps, trying to keep up with you.
Well, and I'm trying to keep up with you. So just as long as we're trying to keep up with each other, we can make miracles happen, right?
Yin and yang, baby. We're just going like this, chasing each other's tails here. So
that's awesome. Hey, so I've got a handful of questions for you. But the
Yes,
first thing that I really wanted my listeners to know is a little bit about who Jon is. You know, I mean, you're this all about town figure. You're always doing so many amazing things. But there's also this air of mysteriousness as well, because a lot of stuff you've done was behind a mask for so many years. So first of all, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Honestly, my childhood was basically a solid tryout for this job. I mean, it really was, because I was born up in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, which was a small farm town. So I was a farm boy, and, you know, climbing the barn, climbing the shed, climbing trees, you know, jumping on trains, you know, all that stuff, you know, taking my truck and, you know, out in the field, I could do anything, and, you know, racing it. And, I mean, there was just so many things that kind of led me to be able to, you know, do the things I did when I was the bear. But yeah, no, I had a great upbringing. And I was really fortunate that I was able to just be me, you know. I mean, it was kind of funny when, like, in high school and stuff, that I remember in my yearbook, it kind of made me scratch my head that maybe I need to slow down a little bit. But it said, you know, that basically there was a ton of people that had written that they probably won't see me at my next class reunion because I wouldn't be alive long enough. That's the type of child I was, you know. I mean, I remember jumping on trains and riding them through town, and you know, walking over bridges. I mean, it was just, you know, when I was a kid, I was really into, you know, the adrenaline. And I think that led me to being able to, use it as the bear.
Wow. So was there anybody in particular as you were growing up that you sort of looked up to that was sort of a wild character in either your hometown or maybe on a national level? I mean, Evil Knievel or anybody like that you ever thought or looked up to?
Well, Jason, you say that. For as old as I am, it would have been Evil Knievel. He was really about the only one back then. I mean, there was really nobody else. Travis Pastrana wasn't born yet. So, I mean, all that stuff. I'm old enough to where really Evil Knievel was the only one. But a lot of it was just because I lived in a small town and there was nothing else to do. So we'd go out and just create fun. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, if I had to look up somebody, it'd be Evil Knievel, but only for the fact that he was a daredevil and stuff like that. But, technically the people that I looked up to as real people and that inspired me were, one, my parents, my dad and mom, and how hard they worked out on that farm. And I really think that helped me as well. It created a good work attitude for me and a drive, because the character took so much, like you had said in the thing, is it pulled me away from my family for a long time, for 25 years. And just the commitment and trying to be new and cutting edge, it just took a lot of time. So I have to give my parents credit for that.
Wow. So I know that when you were the Jazz Bear, and we'll touch on that here in a sec, there was obviously sort of like a one up almost, like you were always trying to figure out like that next crazy thing. Did you feel like that when you were back in junior high and high school? Did you feel like, hey, this thing wasn't really crazy enough, I want to do something more grandiose or more crazy? What was that like?
No, I mean, it really wasn't. It was just me, because I wasn't ever out. Because it's funny, I was just talking with a friend of mine about this today. So when I was growing up, it was just to look for fun. It wasn't to one up anything. It was just, I just want to have fun. But in the mascot world, I was just telling him that I always gave out, and my old assistant, his name was Luke Larson. He helped me out for 16 years and he was amazing. And he made a comment to me. He's like, "Why do you keep sharing all your good stuff?" And I just told this to a friend of mine today. And I said, the reason I did it is because my old football coach, and it still resonates in my head, when I was in football back there, or back in East Grand Forks, but he said, "You're only as strong as your weakest link." And what that did is it's just inspired me to one, try and help other guys, but two, if they're copying it, then it means that it was a good skit or a good stunt. And then what that makes me do is it pushes me harder to create something else. And an example would be like back when I was doing the ladder. First time anybody did it, I went out and it was just a little short A-frame and I was holding up a sign. Then other mascots were copying it. Then I went out with a 24-foot ladder. Then they were copying that. Then it turned into, I need to do something bigger. And then it turned into the handstand. And then there was one mascot, his name was Mark Taylor. He was with the Seattle Supersonics. And then he went down to the Oklahoma City Thunder. But he did the handstand one time. So then that pushed me to do the one-armed handstand. And then and I always push myself to where if nobody copied it, then I'm good. It's like, you know what I mean? If nobody can go past that, then, my one arm was the best I could do, but I actually, before I got left the Jazz, I had created a pole and I was working on doing the flag and then being able to spin around at the top of the ladder, you know what I mean? And hold yourself out at an angle. And that was the next one because I had done the one-arm handstand for so many years and I just needed to change it and do something different. So,
Holy moly. So, when I say one up, I actually mean, because you are such a helpful and wonderful friend to everyone you come in contact with. When I say one up, I actually mean you're one upping yourself, trying to do the bigger and better thing. Because I know that you share and you try to help other people, even if they're your direct competition, which is really amazing of you as a person. What would you say was your sort of soundtrack in high school? Like, what kind of music was sort of surrounding you predominantly when you were growing up?
You won't believe it. It was classical music.
Really? Nice.
Weird as that is, George Winston and stuff. I remember, so I got in a little bit of trouble in school. I'm not sure if you would actually believe that, Jason. I'm not sure. It wasn't mean trouble. It was just, you know, it was just stupid stuff. Like, we were in Spanish class and we were up on the 3rd floor and our teacher didn't show up. So I crawled out the 3rd floor window and I was sitting on the ledge and just hanging out, enjoying the nice day. And then our principal, little sister Basil, I love her, she leaned out the window. She's like, "John, can you come in, please?" And she was so nice until I got in, and then she grabbed me by the ear and almost ripped it off and called me down to the principal's office. But I was in his office for the millionth time because that's where I would go when I got in trouble. And he always listened to classical music, and his name was Phil Myers. And I remember him, and I don't remember the name of the song, but he was explaining how it was basically about the Civil War. And he goes, "This is where the cannons are, and this is, brothers clashing." And honest to God, that was the funniest thing, is because when we were, with me and my friends, whoever drove got to listen to music. So I never had to drive because nobody wanted to listen to my music. So I was all right. I had a driver all the time. So it was awesome. But yeah, no, I listened to classical music. And then I was always different. I always wanted to be different. I never wanted to follow the path. Like, even, I don't know, like, I dressed different. I did things different. I didn't want to be like anybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So,
Definitely.
especially coming from a small town, everybody was the same. So
yeah, I would have almost figured your soundtrack would have been Wild Side by Motley Crue.
I was just going to say Motley Crue. Yeah, no, that was my friends. They listened to that, and Twisted Sister. You remember all that stuff?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. So tell us, what was one of your very first jobs out of high school? Did you still work on the farm, or what were you doing as you left high school?
Nope. So when I left high school, I ended up interviewing for a job out in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and me and my friend both got jobs out there. So we went, and about a month after high school, we moved out to Minneapolis, and I never went back. So I was fortunate enough to where, the friends and being able to live with other people, and I never had to go home. You know what I mean? So I just, a month after high school, I was gone, and I'd go home all the time and help out on the farm and stuff, but I never ended up moving back for a significant amount of time. So yeah, I was putting food on the airplanes for Northwest Airlines, if you remember Northwest back in the day. And then, something that was cool though. So I was working there, and I was training in this guy, and he was a really in shape guy, and his name was Nate Allen. And I remember sitting there going, "God, that name sounds so familiar." And he didn't want anybody to know, but then it slowly leaked out. But he was the Pro Bowl cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings, and I was training him to put food on the planes. And it was an interesting story from his point, because, like he said, he goes, like, when you're in sports, you forget that it's a short career. You know what I mean? So, and with him, he was trying to, like he said, I was trying to live like, up to the Johnsons and trying to live that lifestyle. And he goes, "When you're done, you're done. That money's not coming in." And he ended up just, going broke, and had to take a job and working side by side with me. But I remember we used to always go and play flag football. Well, not flag, but tackle football out in this park on Sundays in Minneapolis. And I remember we asked him to come play with us, and it was the most amazing thing to see him run. I mean, when, like, I was like, all like, I was so hyper, and I was like, "Okay, I'm rushing in on him. I'm going to tackle him." He was the quarterback. And when I ran in, his legs went so fast and he made so many deep moves. My legs literally just gave out and I fell to the ground. I kid you not. And then when he was running, he was like this gazelle. Boom, boom, just these. He could have played all of us and never been tackled. It was, wow. When you sit there and you say, like, there's levels of athleticism and levels of skill, man, it was incredible to see somebody at that level still, after being out for so long, be able to run the way he did. It was amazing.
Wow. Would you say that was one of your first sort of inspirations to get sort of involved in the world of sports in general, or what did that sort of transition start to look like? Were you like really big into sports growing up?
No, I I loved playing sports. I hated watching sports because in my head growing up I out playing baseball, out playing football, I was just outside. The second the sun came up, I was out riding motorcycle, riding bike, playing a game, playing a sport with friends down the road. But I hated sitting in watching TV. Does that make sense? I hated being inside. I had to keep going. But like with my career, I'm still not even a big sports fan because unfortunately, with being in the sports industry for 30 years, it tainted me a little bit. And I think I got to see the dark side of it, if you know what I mean. And it's not as glamorous as everybody thinks. And that's why I never really have that many. There's some guys that I really respect, like John Stockton, all these guys, Carmelo. There's a lot of guys out there that are good and I respect them and stuff, but there's a lot of athletes out there that taint the sport, in my opinion. And they've just made it ugly. Like, an example, I remember I was in the hallway over by the team locker room and I was coming out after therapy and Darren Williams was coming down the hallway. And there was this 10-year-old boy with a Darren Williams jersey on and a notebook. And he asked Darren Williams for an autograph and he just said, nope, and just kept walking. And Andre Karolinko was about 20 feet behind him and stopped and rubbed his head and did the autograph for him. And I mean, it's, everybody sits there and they idolize these players, but they're not always what you think they are. You know what I mean? But my career found me. I never was looking for it. The process was kind of funny in the fact that I literally hung up on 2 general managers that had called me in the minor leagues to come out. So I was going to school in Fargo, North Dakota. And what do you call it? I was coaching at, I gotta get this is what happens when you get old, Jason. Yeah. But I was coaching at a gymnastics gym, even though I wasn't a gymnast. And I just remember going in and I lied on my application and said that I was a gymnast in high school, but we didn't have gymnastics at my little Catholic high school. But I remember just listening to other coaches and, just fudging my way through teaching these little kids how to do gymnastics. But a CBA team, which was the Continental Basketball Association back in the day, which is the D League now, they came in. It was called the Fargo Fever, brand new team. And they said, is there anybody here that would be willing to be the mascot? And immediately everybody just pointed over to me. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And I did it for $25 a night, which was back in college. It was amazing. And I remember going there, and that's when I was sledding down the stairs and I bungee jumped out of the ceiling. And I was doing all that stuff.
And this was in North Dakota, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I remember getting called in halfway through the season and they were just like, hey, we're going to separate. We're going to go different or separate do different paths here, because they were afraid I was either going to kill myself or I was going to kill somebody in the crowd. And that's exactly how they said it. And I was like, cool, it was $25. I didn't care. Well, the thing that was really heartwarming for me and stuff is it made the news that I had been let go. And then people were in the crowd with signs and wanting Thermo. My character's name was Thermo and they wanted Thermo back. And that was like kind of the first time that I was like, oh, I didn't have a scale on how good I was or anything, So, but that was like the first time that I was like, oh, maybe I was doing something right. And then that was like, the first time that I met the famous chicken, Ted Gianolis back then. And that's one of the first times that I realized, I was like, you do this for a living? I was like, really? But it still never occurred to me, because I was a small farm boy and to me, you had to work. That just wasn't work. That was fun for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, I was done with that job. And then about a month or 2 later, I get a call and it was in the morning and his name was Kevin Moore. and he was with the Winnipeg Thunder. And the Winnipeg Thunder was up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but they were the NBL league. And do you remember Tom Naselke? God bless his soul.
I do know the name, but I'm not sure why.
He used to coach Jazz. He was the coach for the
course,
Jazz for a while. But he was the commissioner up in Winnipeg, or up in the NBL for Canada. And they called, and he had said, hey, we saw that you'd been let go. You're exactly what we're looking for. Would you be willing to come up? And I thought it was a joke. And I said, blah, blah. And I don't remember what I said, but I hung up on him. And then he called back, and he's like, no, I'm dead serious. This is Kevin Moore. I'm with a team up in Winnipeg. And I was like, I kind of woke up because I was in bed, and I was like, okay. So I listened. I drove up to the Canadian border. I met him, and I worked the league for that year with them. And then I came down to continue schooling. And then it was about another month later, I get another call, and it was from Jon Absey, who was the general manager for the Sioux Falls Skyforce, which was another CBA team. And they said, we had seen you up in Winnipeg. We'd love for you to come down for tryouts. And I was like, okay. So I put together this highlight tape and of Winnipeg and some stuff from the Fever, went down to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and there were 10 people there for tryouts, and the owners were there, and Jon Absey was there, and the coach was there, and they put my tape in. They watched the tape, and they quit tryouts, and they just hired me. And I worked there for the year. And then that's when I met Bob Wolf, who just retired this year, but he was the old Phoenix Gorilla. And that was the first time that it just sunk in that, doing something you love can actually be a career. And he inspired me, to put together a resume and a highlight tape. And I sent it out to all the NBA teams, and got a call from Grant Harrison, and he said, we're going to have a 3-team tryout. It'll be Seattle, Sacramento, and Utah. We're going to do it here in Utah, in Salt Lake City. Tryouts were at Westminster College, and they had 8 guys show up. They had like 50 apply. They picked the top 8. And I remember, once again, I wasn't going to go because I didn't have enough money because in my head, how it was college. I was like, how am I going to afford a flight, hotel, all that stuff? And I remember I went to the store, and I got a coffee, and I brought home a newspaper, and I was looking at the classifieds to get the number because I was going to sell my truck. And I thought, okay, I'll sell my truck. I'll get the money. I'll go do tryouts, and I'll worry about how I get around town later. But literally 15 minutes later, I get a call from Teresa Pryor from the Utah Jazz, and she's like, you're one of 2 people that we're going to fly out and put up. And I was like, you're kidding me. And I told her straight up, I said, I was just going to sell my truck. So I went out to Utah. And the thing that was interesting is I'm not great at anything. I'm just good enough to fake it. You know what I mean? Because everybody that showed up was an ASU gymnast or, a dunker. His name was Eli Akins. And the man could jump out of the gym. He could hit a trampoline and grab the top of the backboard. He was amazing. We had a couple ASU gymnasts that showed up. We had from the old Salt Lake Eagles hockey club. Remember the Salt Lake Eagles here? His name was Greg Holton. He was an amazing mascot. He was one of the other guys that was there for tryouts. But Alinco Costumes had brought in gorillas. They looked less like the Phoenix Gorilla. But there was only one suit that fit everybody, and the head too. And when we drew straws, I was the last guy. And I just remember when it was my turn, I put the head on and I cinched it. And there was a foam pad right here on the forehead. And all 8 guys' sweat just rolled down my face. And I remember just dry heaving. And I was like, oh my God. And putting on that suit, it was soaked from everybody's sweat. It was nasty. But when I got my requirements for the tryouts, there were 5 things that everybody needed to do. And it was dunking, tumbling, dancing, crowd interaction, and a skit. And I remember, everybody went out and did their, what would you call it? Their best stuff. You know what I mean? Like Eli just dunked. The ASU guy just went up and tumbled and he dunked. But nobody really touched on all 5 things except for me. And so I wasn't the best dunker, was not the best tumbler for sure. But I did all 5 things. And when I left, I thought, there's no way I'm getting this job, because everybody there was so talented. And I ended up getting a call back, and it was between me and Eli Akins, who actually ended up in the Globetrotters for a number of years, and Greg Holton from the Eagles. And this time they put us in big Barney costumes, and we ended up out at Valley Fair Mall. And we just had to interact with people. And once again, I left thinking there's no way I got this job. But then when I got home, I got a call from Seattle, Sacramento, and Utah, and all offering me the job.
Wow.
And because I'm an idiot, and because I was a small farm boy, I didn't call anybody back. And it was about 3 weeks. And Grant Harrison, God bless his soul, he called me up and he's like, "Hey, Jon, did you take a job with the other teams?" I said, "No." And we talked for a little bit. And he's like, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I don't know, Grant." I go, I'm just scared. And he goes, "Why don't you come out here for a year and just try it out?" And otherwise, like I said, it found me. I closed every door that was coming, and it kept opening up. So I was really fortunate, man. I mean, God was looking out for me, because there's no reason I got that job.
Wow. And what year was this?
93.
1993. So okay. So then
you probably graduated in 93, mister.
Oh, that's awesome. So you come back to Utah. Was the original idea for the mascot the bear, or did it transition into the bear? Tell us about what that looked like.
So thankfully, the Jazz, when I got out here, I got to have a little bit of input on the design. And one of them, what the ideas was a Black Panther, because of the Jazz history with being in New Orleans, and which would have been a cool character. Mm-hmm. But they wanted to kind of break away from the Jazz history of being in New Orleans. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Then the other one was a Jazzmanian devil, like on Bugs Bunny, the Tasmanian devil. Oh, no. It was that. Another one was like this big blob. Another one was like a big fat, it almost like Grisby from the Grizzlies. It was a big, heavy set bear. And, I kept telling him, I'm like, it's got to be more sleek, because I won't be able to dunk in a big costume. I won't be able to tumble in a big costume, because I wasn't good enough. So I just remember we ended up with the bear, and it worked because we said, he was native to the Wasatch Mountains. And when it first was made, it had a big butt. They had put padding on the hips. So for the first year, I remember I had this kind of big butt. It was just kind of hard to move around. So we took that out after the first year. And then I remember the costume didn't have fur below the bottom of the head. And I hated it because you could see up into the head. And then the next year after that, we added the fur, which it currently has now. But other than that, it has been pretty much the same all 25 years that I wore it. The only thing that was interesting is a lot of guys every year get new heads, or 1 or 2 heads made. I wore the same head for 15 years because Alinco couldn't reproduce it right. It just didn't look the same and fit the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, it was, a lot of guys are able to put it on and they're just like, it's okay. It's good enough. I couldn't do it. So the one that I had over that much time with the heat and my face, because it was molded to my face, it just fit like a glove. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the 15th year, I brought it in to have it refurred, and the latex fell apart. And they told me about it, and I literally was almost in tears, because I was like, I can't wear another head. So I spent the whole summer them making this head, and I remember going in every day, and I'd put a paper, or a clothespin here, and I'd try and make the eyes wider, and I'd look in, I was just constantly helping them work on this head, and it worked, and ended up with the second head, which took me for the next 10 years.
Wow.
So I had 2 heads.
Refurred. I mean, that was funny.
Refurred. We refurred, yep, and reglue it.
So I've got a quick story, and then it's going to lead into my next question.
Gotcha.
This was many, many years ago. I did sales for Comcast,
Yep.
And one summer, Discovery Channel came to me and asked me, hey, would you like to be, I think it was Mr. Sharkey, and stand on stage with the mayor and Miss Teen Utah and all these things for Shark Week? And of course, I'm like, absolutely. I'd love to be a shark. So I was out there. I mean, it was a tank top and it was shorts, thankfully, because it was like 103, 104 degrees outside.
Yep.
But I had this huge shark helmet type thing.
Yep.
But the nose of the shark, I mean, it was like, it had to have been 1.5 feet to 2 feet out. So anytime a little kid would run up and try to give me a hug, I'd lean down to try to look at him, and the nose of the shark kept hitting all the kids on the head. And so that leads me to my next question is visibility, because you did some mind-blowing things. And I know, obviously, on a very granular level, like what it was like to have one of those mascot heads on and not be able to see appropriately. What was that experience like, and how long did it take you to get used to?
Well, a lot better than the shark that you had on. And I just love the fact that kids are running away going, that shark's mean. you're just bopping them on the top of their head. Yep. That's awesome. No, I honestly was really fortunate because I was one of the few mascots in any of the sports that had their real eyes for their vision. Everybody else is either looking through screens or looking through the mouth, or they look through the neck. But my vision was my eyes, and it benefited me in it freaked people out, and I could create emotion by just how I moved my eyes, because if you saw my eyes and you could see me squinting or, looking at you really hard, so I could do that. But the vision, I always said, because everybody said, aren't you going to put your suit on and practice? And I was like, if I can do it out of suit, I can do it in suit, because my vision was that good. So, I mean, I did have some, like this is another story. So I remember when I had started, Greg Ostertag came to town, and his son, Cody, was here. And like you said, I couldn't see below me. And I didn't see him coming up on me. And I remember kind of running, and I need him so hard in the chest because I didn't see him. And I was just running, and I need him. And all I remember is I remember hitting something, and I stopped and I looked down a little bit, and I see him sliding across the floor.
Poor
and
kid.
It was hilarious because didn't even phase him. Just a tough little kid. He just got back up, ran over to me. I remember like looking around like, is anybody going to be pissed at me right now? Because I just about killed Greg Ostertag's kid.
Wow.
But it was pretty funny.
Oh my gosh. So
then I remember when Greg got here. I'm so sorry. I remember when Greg got here. We would go back and forth because he was 0, 00. And I remember going, no, I was here first. It's my number. And literally at first, I remember we were out. He got introduced at a Bees game. I was out there, and he looked at me and said, you got to change your number. And I remember looking at him, and I'm like, who the hell are you? I remember me and him we started off like in this fight over who's going to keep the number, this battle. And I mean, and it was kind of serious, but then it turned into him and I being great friends. Like he came over to all my daughter's birthday parties. He came over to the hospital when they were born. Greg Ostertag, and I know a lot of people have their opinion about him here in Utah, but he's one of the guys that gave me faith in sport. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everybody sat and they could bust him, about his work ethic or, how he played or whatnot. But the one thing that they will never take away from him is his character and his integrity as a person. That man was so down to earth, like who he was in the locker room, on the court, and in real life was the same. And that's the one thing that really is weird to me, is that there's so many players are one way in the locker room, another way on the court, and a whole different person in their personal life when you see them out and about. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
And I hate it because it's just like, why do you have these 3 different personalities that you have to be? Why can't you just be who you want to be? You know what I mean? And I hated that. But Greg was great. He never changed character. who he was is who he was, and I loved it. I loved him for it.
Wow. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, and of course, you being the Jazz Bear during one of the greatest, I guess, dynasties of Utah Jazz history, where we've got like the team of the mid 90s, right? And we're just hitting on all cylinders. There's an energy that is next level. What was that experience like, being around that level of energy where all eyes were on Utah for a period of time?
It was amazing. It was, and I still talk to, like, so back when I started coming in, all the people that worked for the back office or front office back then, we were family. You know what I mean? And we still to this day get together for dinners, get together for lunches. You know what I mean? And we all stay in touch. And there's probably 50, 60 of us that all are still super tight because of our experience through those good days. And I was just actually talking, his name is Tim Smith. He's with the Los Angeles Kings, but I was talking with him today about it as well. It's kind of funny that we were saying the same thing. And I told him, you know, it was amazing. And the hardest part about it was when we lost those playoff games, I went through a depression, because here you are, you know, going from round 1 to round 2 to Western Conference Finals to the finals. And it was just, you had more energy. And I remember just so much adrenaline and energy for so long. But when you lose, you're done. There's no more cameras. There's no more, hey, come shoot this, or you're not being creative anymore. It's just, you're done. And it was weird. Like, there was a lot of people that took time off, that we all went through a weird depression, because you're on such a high, you know. It was like a drug, and it was so fun and so amazing. I remember one time we were sitting there, we were in the corner, Luke Larson, my assistant. The Jazz had just hit a 3 to tie it, and the crowd, like, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it. The crowd was screaming so loud. Luke was like, where's my hand? About this far away from me. And I couldn't hear him. And he was yelling at me, like, because what he was saying was, what do you want to do for this timeout? And I'm looking at him, and I'm just laughing. And I'm like, I can't hear you, dude. And because the crowd was so loud. And I remember back in the days, I'm sure you remember it too, they said that our arena was one of the loudest in the league. Yep. And it was like comparable during the finals, whatever, to standing behind a jet engine in decibel levels.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was insanely loud. I remember going home, and even with my helmet on and head, my ears would be ringing all night, because our fans were just so, I loved our fans. Our fans were some of the best in the league. They were just so passionate, and they really cared. But then again, and this is the other thing where I think sports has taken a bad turn. Back then, and you remember all this, I remember the players were so much more approachable. And fans could come down on the floor, and they could talk with the players, and the players would talk back. And they, you know, the players weren't self-important, and, you know, thought they were, you know, bigger or better than anybody. And my favorite memories were like, it was Steve and Minnie, and they were an older couple that I knew ever since I started. So for 25 years. And every game they would come down and bring me a Mountain Dew, and Luke iced tea, and she would bake cookies and stuff like that for us. But I remember watching them out on the court, and they were talking to Greg Foster. Mm-hmm. And they made a comment about, you should come over to dinner sometime. And I'll be damned if he didn't go over for dinner.
That's awesome.
Isn't that awesome? But
Heck
that's
yeah.
the way it was back then. I remember Adam Keefe sitting up in the stands talking to people. You know, I mean, it was just a whole different feel. You loved the Jazz because you loved the players. Does that make sense? Because you could actually, they would give you an autograph.
You were sort of part of the whole thing, the ecosystem, right?
It really was. And nowadays, they have separated the fans and the players so much. I just don't, you know, you have to just like the team. And you can like somebody, but you never really get that chance of getting the autograph, getting a high five, talking to them. And now, especially with ticket prices, it's all corporate. I mean, it's just, to me, sports in today's world is cold. Does that make sense? Yeah. You buy a ticket, you sit your butt in a seat, you watch a game, you go home. There's no I just don't feel like you have the connection like fans and players did in the 90s. That was just a magical moment back then.
It was the 90s. I think 90s across the board. I mean, we could definitely go into all kinds of really amazing experiences. A couple of things that I wanted to sort of hone in on was, okay, so I mean, you did so many amazing and monumental things. I mean, I was even on the phone with a dear friend, Tony, earlier today, and I said that we were going to be sitting down and chatting, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see this interview. This is going to be absolutely amazing." He's like, "I remember this thing and all these cool things you did." Did you pre-plan all of these stunts, or were there anything that were like just off the cuff, like, "Hey, let's do this thing and see how it works out"? What did that sort of look like in that planning phase?
It was about 50-50. There was a lot of things that I thought, well, I'm gonna plan this out and practice it. But I never liked to practice a lot. And it's funny because I used to say this all the time, is there's always the once in a million chance I'm going to hurt myself. And the more I practice, the closer to a million I get. And I'd always say that. And I just looked at it as I was afraid of doing this stuff during practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I remember, I mean, a great example is when I was during the finals, I was snowboarding down the stairs. And I remember I never snowboarded before. I had a friend, his name was Tim Strong. He was a pro snowboarder and an amazing fella. And man, I'll just call him a fella. But he brought me up to the mountains, and he just taught me the gist of how to at least go straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had this custom snowboard made, and I was so afraid that when you get afraid, that's where things go wrong in a sense. Mm-hmm. Because I was so tight and nervous and thinking about what could go wrong. But that happened a lot is I tried not to practice that much because I could game it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know how people talk about the zone?
Yeah.
It's true as hell. I'm telling you, Jason, is the coolest thing in the world. There were many times, like I remember going out on the bike one time, and I was sitting on the stairs getting ready to go. And I'm looking, I could hear the crowd and people cheering. And I look down at the bottom, and my assistant, Luke, is tapping his wrist. And he's like, "We got to get going, you know?" And I looked at him, and I kept going like this. And he knew what it meant. It was like, I'm not in my zone. I'm just not there. You know what I mean? And he's like, like kind of, well, you just got to go for it. And I remember sitting there just going, oh my hell, what am I going to do? And then I took a deep breath. And just before I let off the brake, it literally, Jason, it's just, that's how it was. I focused down the stairs, couldn't hear a thing. And I can remember every thought that I have going down the stairs, coming off the ramp, hitting the ground, landing on the floor. And then when I stand up, it's like, whoosh, and the noise comes back, and it's like, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden my vision is full. It happened all the time. Every time I did a stunt, like I remember doing the handstand, same thing. When I was doing my one-armed handstand one time, so focused on staying straight, getting my body over, and I couldn't hear the crowd. I could just hear my heart beating. I could feel where my feet were in compare, to where my arm was. And I was leaning over, and I was so focused that I didn't realize that I was straining a tendon in my shoulder, and it popped. I mean, I should have felt the pain, but I couldn't. And all of a sudden, I just remember feeling this pop, and my shoulder gave out. I fell. I put my left arm through one of the rungs, and I caught myself before I fell to the floor. And I went in the back, and I found out I tore a ligament. But it was just because I was in that zone. I couldn't feel any. I was just focused on doing the stunt. You know what I mean? And when it came to stunts and stuff like that, having 20,000 people cheer for you, it takes away all that fear. You're just like, yep, I'll do it. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but there was a ton of times. His name is Dane, and he was awesome. He was with the stunt team for the Jazz. If you remember the stunt team back then.
Yeah.
But I'd always like say, hey, tonight, if we get a chance and the timeout works, this is what I want to do with all your guys. And he's like, great, cool. And I remember one night, I had Little Giant Ladders. They're the ones who built all my ladders, but they built me this 25-foot, just straight ladder. It wasn't an extension ladder, but it was just a straight fiberglass ladder. And I told him, I said, I want all you guys to hold it, and I'm going to climb to the top. And he's like, do you want to practice this? And I'm like, okay. So we just practiced those guys grabbing the ladder, setting it down. I crawled on their backs and I went up a few rungs and I'm like, okay, we're good. And sure enough, 3 minutes later, the horn goes, they want to know what we're doing. I said, let's do the ladder. So we hauled it out on the court right there, without really practicing. And I crawled to the top. And this is where practicing helps. But I didn't realize how much sway there was in this thing. And I remember sitting there and I could hear this thing cracking, and Dane said he could hear it too. But I still remember looking down and he would walk away. I mean, like literally, I was swaying probably 5 feet in either direction. And he would follow me just in case I came off and that ladder broke. He was going to try and catch me. But yeah, I remember, there was a lot of times where we just came up with something and went and did it. But like the big stunts, we had to figure out how to get the equipment on and off in time.
Oh yeah.
And I did practice, just to make sure I could actually do it,
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, like I said, I'm not a big athlete or a gymnast or anything. And so I was only good at stuff. I wasn't great at anything. So,
wow. So, and just to touch on really quick, what was driving the motorcycle like with that, the huge head on your shoulders?
Driving the motorcycle was awesome because it was like a licensed, every stop sign was a skid, every takeoff was a burnout. And it was just awesome. I love riding that motorcycle. That motorcycle over time just kind of became part of me. I could drive that thing like crazy. I ended up learning how to do seat stand or, standing on the seat and bouncing. I could drive with my feet on the handlebars. I could turn the wheel and do cookie. It was just, I loved driving that bike. I remember shooting down 300 South over by the Zions Bank there. I was by the Channel 2 building. And I remember going, really fast. And I'm like, damn it, I forgot some stuff at the arena. And I hit my brakes and I was sliding sideways and my tires hit some tar that they must have just put down. And that bike hit it and it catapulted me off the bike out in front of traffic. I remember the bike hit the ground. I roll, I get up, I kind of feel myself like, holy hell, I'm okay. And I look and all these cars, everybody's at a stop in the street, watching, this wreck happen. And, I hopped back on the bike and took off. But it was awesome how many times, Joe Timmons over at Harley Davidson, I'd wreck that bike because I was driving it too hard, and I'd bring it over to him and he'd be just like, oh, and he'd fix it. So it was awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. I didn't know you ever had an actual accident with that.
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, I laid that bad boy down a lot. So.
Oh my gosh, dude, that is awesome. So before we move to sort of the next segment, I wanted to ask if you're comfortable. Why? Because I know there's a lot of people that have the question, why did you quit being the Jazz Bear? Because you were there for 25 years, right?
Yeah. No,
if you want to share, it's totally okay, whatever.
Hell, I don't care. And this is where I've talked to a bunch, like I got asked to come out and speak at the NHL conference and the NFL, MLB, and I said the same thing to everybody. Is as comfortable as you feel you are in your position, and I don't care who you are in any job or whatever, we're all one management change away from being let go. And this correlates back to what we were talking about back in the 90s. The best way I can put it is the Jazz was a family. And once Larry died, it all changed. It started to become corporate. They started putting people in there that didn't know how to run it and didn't run it for the right reasons. And then it was just poor management. And that's where it basically led to. It was me and his name was Jeremy Castro, and he was the manager at the time. And then Steve Starks, who was the president. I just remember they didn't like the fact that, because I had a survey that was done, or I didn't, the team had a survey that was done about the players, dancers, food, everything in the arena. And the Bear came in at a 96% approval rating, which was better than anything.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
And the popularity of the Bear was third behind Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. And I remember a week after getting called in and Jeremy Castro telling me that we need to change the character. And I'm like, why do we need to change a character? He's like, oh, you know, sometimes change is good for the sake of change. And I was like, but I'm not broken. And what it really came down to was Steve Starks and their arrogance as management. It was all about the team. Does that make sense? And the Bear competed against the team. The Bear had become so successful that it had its own brand, in a sense, and they didn't like that. The other thing they didn't like is that they couldn't say, we created him. Does that make sense? I remember, because a lot of times when you talk to Starks, it was always his team, his arena. Everything was kind of his, you know, like, because that's where the renovation came in. And, you know, he had some help in putting together the team back then. But they couldn't say that about me. And the other thing was, you know, so when that new management came in, originally I could go from me right to the president, or from me to my boss to my president, you know, but then all of a sudden they buried me 6 levels down. So then I was struggling trying to ever get anything done, because I had to go through 6 levels to get anything, you know, like a skit or a stunt. Then, being that I was pushing back and I didn't want to change, they stopped with me riding the motorcycle. They said, you can't do any more stunts. You can't do this. And it was just boxing me in. So me and Jeremy Castro were like this all the time. And I remember the breaking point, and I knew that, man, something's going to happen here. Is he had written me up one night. It was just before a game. I drove my motorcycle over to a charity event, and I drove the bike back, and I was going to get ready for the opening. And he comes down and he was going to write me up. And he's like, I'm writing you up for riding the motorcycle in costume. And I'm just like, you can't write me up for riding the motorcycle in costume. He's like, yeah, I can. I said, no, you can't. I go, you can give me a warning. I go, but I've been riding that bike for 25 years. And he's like, no, you haven't. And I'm like, well, you think if you were my manager that you would know certain things about the Bear. And he didn't know. So he finds out that, oh yeah, I've been riding it forever. So then he crosses it out and he wrote, revving the motorcycle and scaring the bomb dogs. And that's where I knew that, all right, this is not going to go well. So that's where it all ended. They had to make a decision, either keep me or keep Jeremy Castro, who ended up getting let go right after I get it anyway. So, so that's where it all ended up.
Wow. Well, thanks very much for sharing that.
No, dude, I like sharing it, because it's just, you know, it's frustrating, because they really did. They wrecked a great thing. The jazz organization was amazing. The thing that's interesting though is the fact that, like I said before, we were family and we all worked together, and they got rid of all of that. They didn't want the relationships, and it's just not the same. And I don't know anybody over there anymore. Everybody's left. It's a whole different culture over there.
Wow. That's wild. So, yeah. So, I mean, wrapping up, I mean, mentally, emotionally, physically, I mean, everything. That's a monstrous transition from a 25-year career as being one of the most widely recognized, not just mascots, but personas in the state of Utah. What you did was absolutely amazing.
I love you. No, I'm sorry. You know, all I caught was the end of what you were saying, because somebody called in right when you were talking. I'm like, whoa, and I couldn't hear you, and I hit decline. So
that's okay. And I've also got my dog scratching at the door too, so I did it.
No, brother, I love you. And you know what though? And like I said before, or like you said in the intro, the success of the Bear wasn't me. I mean, I was just a cog in the wheel, you know, in the clock. And when you really look at the success, it just, there's so many people involved. Grant Harrison, you know, my manager for so many years, being willing, like he always said, he goes, I'm not the mascot, you are. He goes, I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself. Just don't hang yourself. And I was like, okay. They trusted me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they, you know, a lot of companies, they hire people, but then they micromanage them. And it's like, well, if you hired me to do a job, let me do the job. And you can put me back in, you know, keep me in the rails, but let me do the job. And that's what Grant did, is he let me do my job. And he just pulled me in every now and then when it got a little too crazy. Like I remember one time I had a parachute when I was in the military, and I took this parachute because I called artillery, and it was for an incendiary round. And I thought, well, if I put this on me and I jump out of the ceiling, I know I'm not going to, you know, land soft, but maybe I'll be slow enough to where I can land, you know, And me and him talked about it. And he's like, "You're not doing it. You're not doing it." I'm like, "No, Grant, I think we can do this." So he said, "Okay." He goes, "You can do it, but I want you to test it first." So we put this duffel bag with 200 pounds in it, threw it over the side, and that thing hit so hard. I was just like, and I remember that I was just talking to Grant. I'm like, thank you for not doing, for not letting me do that. But no, I remember there were just so many people that helped me along the way, and a lot of it had to do with the fans. The fans were just so accepting of the character, and I know that there's a ton of mascots that it started out in the NBA, NHL, NFL, and a lot of them struggle with the fans and trying to get that acceptance. Jerry Sloan, God bless his soul, the fact that he let me in the locker room every game, get therapy along with the players. I mean, let me go out in the huddle. Let me, you know what I mean? It was just, it so many people that just allowed me to be part of the whole experience, everything from the team to the, being on the court, allowing me. There's a lot of people that mascots, I can't drag people on the court. I was bringing kids and families out on the court all the time and introducing them to players. And, it really is, everybody that was involved, their effort that made the Bear what it was.
Dude, you, and also the thing that made the Bear what it was and what makes you is you've not only got heart, but you've got one of the biggest hearts of anybody I know.
Oh, God bless you. You too, Jace. I mean, seriously, I've known you now, Matt Griff, a dear friend of both of ours. And, I mean, the first time I met you, you were doing you were helping out a young lady. For that, remind me on all of it. I just remember there was a Humvee, and then we got to drive in that.
Yeah, man, we've done some fun stuff together, dude. And the thing that I'm looking forward to is being able to do so many more things together, and I love seeing your involvement out there in the community, the things that you're always doing, and you never ever ask for anything on the back end. You're just a man of honor and integrity, and I'm not just just trying to blow smoke. I mean, this is straight up. This is like straight up gratitude. And but before we wrap up, though, I want to
thank you for that, though, Jace. I really appreciate that. I'm going to throw another $20 in the Venmo just for you.
Sounds good. I'll buy you the pizza with that second.
There you go. Perfect.
Buy a pizza with your own money. So let's talk about what you're working on now. So I mean, you're working on the cosplay business, props business, and you're also working with the homie Tim. And if you want to sort of introduce him as well, but talk about your business. Like, what are you working on?
I'm just going to say, the reason I've been looking around a little bit is because I got a full moon from that man. So I was sitting here just focusing, just going, do not look at it. Nope, his butt's naked. His butt. But we were, but no, in the mascot world, there's so many relationships that you build. And, Tim's one of those relationships that I got to know. And this is kind of a funny story. And I can say it because I'm not talking about him behind his back. But when I first met him, I was like, God, he's such a dick. Because he came in to do a hockey game for the LA Kings. And he was here. And I remember I met him, but he was just in a bad mood. But I remember I told him straight up, I go, after we've gotten to know each other, I said, you know what? The first time I met you, and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But a great guy, and, trust him all the hell. And we decided that we would kind of, work together, and neither one of us want to work for anybody anymore. And we'd rather try and stay in the business that we know the most about. And that's, mascots and props and stuff like that.
Nice. Do you want to bring Tim into the shot really quick without the moon?
Don't judge him on his attire. We were supposed to be working today.
We're working very hard in the warehouse. But I just want to say that he did say that I was a jerk, but what was the use a dick? But he didn't say how bad of a place I was in at the time. So,
I did. I said you were in a bad mood.
And my team wasn't treating me so well at the time. So when I came in, I was a little jealous of everything that Jon had been given by his team, even though you were kind of in that same spot.
Yeah.
We were both just dragging at the end of our careers of just what's happening to us. So
yeah, and the end of your career was over, or not the end of your career. You left the LA Kings, is that correct?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
We'll just say it was a forced retirement.
There's
So
a lot of guys like that, right?
Yeah.
on a long enough timeline, I think that sort of happens to everybody across all industries, right?
You know what? It was funny just sitting over there listening to the things that he was saying. It was almost like our careers mirrored each other. You know, at one point I was, you know, obviously it was when social media was starting, but I was one of the most followed mascots in all four sports. And for a hockey guy, that was a huge accomplishment. And then 2-3 years later, you know what? We need to change your branding and we need to change what's going on just to change it, you know, because I did the same thing he says, like, I'm not broken. Like, I'm not only am I not broken, but we were at the top of our profession, and now you want to change everything, and it just, you know, I think it's cyclical with almost every team. At some point, you know, like you said, it doesn't matter who you are, how good you're doing, or what you've done, and how many awards you got. Everybody's expendable, and that's what sucks about sports.
'Cause I think a lot of times when you get new management that comes in,
Oh.
new management that comes in, and it goes, actually, it's the same. If you look at teams, when you bring in a new coach, they usually get rid of all their people and they bring in their own guys. And you know what I mean? Like they bring in their own trainers, and that's kind of the same way as when in the front office, when management comes in, they want to put their own stamp on, you know, everything. And when it comes to the entertainment, well, okay, let's change it up. And it's like, just like you said, is we're not broke, but they want
This is broke though.
yeah, it's broken. But they want to put their own stamp on it. And that's where all that comes from. Whether it's right or wrong, they just want to say, I did this.
Right.
And that's okay.
Exactly.
It is. And honestly, I think that you're going to start seeing a lot of the older guys in the mascot world kind of bailing out now, because it's, you know, we got to mascot when it was the best,
Yeah.
you know, the best time. And now it's changed so much, and you have to be worried about everything. I couldn't mascot in today's world. Not a chance. Everything I did that was okay back then is way too edgy now, you know?
Well, I mean, just think of OSHA and how paranoid things have gotten along those lines.
Yep.
I mean, I can't even imagine anybody trying to do some of the things that you did back then today.
Yeah,
So,
It's
It would
even
be hard.
little things. Like a couple years ago, I took the Anaheim Ducks were obviously our rival, and I took the guy's hat off, and I didn't even do anything with the hat. I just took it off of his head, and then he was so serious. He said, "That's assault. I'm going to file assault charges on you." And at that moment, I was like, "Where are we? Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? This is supposed to be fun. Like, you're a rival of the team. Like." And assault charges came up. I was like, okay, this is just getting to the point where it's ridiculous. Like, you can't do the things that people fell in love with you for.
Yep.
You know, people loved it when you protected your house, or, you know, didn't like the visiting team come in. I mean, it's not a library. You're not supposed to, you know, invite everybody in. Sure, come in, cheer for your team. It'll be great. You know, you should get a pie in your face.
so let's you know, for just a few more moments, what is it that you guys are working on? I mean, you're moving into a new realm, a sort of new year, new you kind of thing. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what this business looks like? I'm excited.
So, I mean, it's kind of, there's kind of a bunch of businesses kind of mixed together. One of them is Rocky Mountain Productions, which does animatronics, 3D printing, cosplay stuff, mascots. And then we have Sego Promos, which is a promotional company for promotional items, apparel, stuff like that. And then we have another one called Goat Mascots, which basically, you know, the vision I have that is all three of them will work together, you know, especially helping promote each other. But with Goat Mascots is we're going to be able to sell packages, bring in a lot of the old retired guys, and you can, if you're a college team or a minor league team, you can hire them to come in and they'll consult with your team and mascot. We're going to have packages that, you know, there's a 4-skit package or an 8-skit package, and we'll have videos that demonstrate it. We'll talk to them, but you can buy all this stuff to help your character, better himself as a performer.
Wow, that's amazing. And obviously, you know, with your background talent, and it sounds like, you know, Tim's background talent, I mean, it sounds like you guys have got some major power there that you're going to be able to sort of catapult this thing in a sort of what is it, a parabolic direction.
Oh, I like that word. I'm writing that down.
That's a big word.
I know. I don't even know what it means, but I love that word.
That's awesome.
We're just mascots. And we breathed a lot of CO2 over the time.
Exactly.
So I lost a lot of brain cells. That's for sure.
That's awesome, man. So is there anything that maybe I haven't touched on that that you'd like to share, Jon, or that we need to know about you as a person? I just want to make sure that everybody that that is out there watching this knows sort of who sort of created this just legacy.
You know, I love you, one, for letting me come on and be a part of your show. That's amazing.
The game entertainment guy in me, I just want a big light to shine on you and confetti. And
But,
it's amazing.
No, but it's, you know, the thing that's hard is, and I appreciate those kind words, it's not me. Like I said before, there's just so many people that helped me along the way. And, you know, thanking them is one. The other thing is just, I really wanted to make sure that when I was done, the one thing that I was really worried about was I thought by not having the Jazz Bear costume and stuff, I lost my vehicle to be able to still do community stuff and charities. But I was totally wrong. It's actually, as fun as it was in the suit, I never really got to experience the full, you know, event. Does that make sense? Because I was always just a part of it. And now I get to go in and meet these kids and talk to the parents, and I love it. And it's just such a whole new world for me that, you know, I've been asked a number of times, hey, you know, put the suit on, or, you know, because I have this gray bear that was made for me, and they're like, hey, put the suit on and come to the event. I'm like, no, I'd rather go as Jon, because I want to be able to talk and shake hands and hang out and find out, you know, the story and
not breathe in the CO2.
And not breathe in the CO2 and sweat. But it you know, honestly is I can't say it enough. I just, people like you, Jason, you know, we met, we did some charity things together, and we've, you know, maintained and created this friendship. And I love that. And to me, have you ever watched It's a Wonderful Life?
Yep.
I watch it every year. And my favorite part of that whole thing is at the end when his brother, you know, does a toast to George, and he's like, the richest person in Bedford. You know what I mean? Because of the relationships, not because of how much money he has, because he didn't have any, but, you know, that's what I'm striving for, is I want to know that, you know, when I die, I got a full church and I've left a footprint on this planet. And that's all I really care about. I don't need to die with $1 million. The best book I ever read was How to Die with a Zero Balance. And I'm way on my way. I'm right on track.
Just everything to the best visibility.
And that book, yeah, I'm living it I'm living it. But I just do. I just cherish, you know, our friendship that we have, and I cherish all the relationships that I've created or that have been created, you know, because of the character and after the character, and just everybody that's so supportive. I can't thank everybody enough.
Man, dude, that is freaking awesome. I'm so thankful that we were able to spend this time together today. And I'm ultra excited about seeing your guys' business and what it looks like next. And anything I can do to help you guys in your business, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to do whatever I can, you know, whether connect you to somebody or whatever, you know, give you shout outs on social media, all that kind of stuff.
You're amazing. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you so much. That
Absolutely,
would be awesome,
brother. And my final question before we wrap up is, what is one of your favorite quotes or favorite songs, or both?
For both. I say it all the time. One of my favorite quotes is, you can always tell the character of somebody by how they treat people that can't do anything for them. I love that one. And any song by Journey. There you go.
We heard them all in the car right now.
And to this day, I still listen to love songs and slow. If I listen to like rock music, I get shaky and anxious. So I just listen to mellow love songs.
Man, that is awesome.
And I garden. So I'm not much of a man.
But that's a whole other show.
Garden, listen to Journey, and yeah, I lost my man card a long time ago.
Oh no, man. I think that amplifies it because it shows you as a well-rounded individual.
Jon Absey Part 2.
Part 2.
Gardening in Utah.
Exactly. And you know what, John? You're not the former Jazz Bear. You're Jon Absey with a heart the size of the universe.
Oh, I love you, Jason. Thank you for that.
I love you too, brother. And much love, Tim. Thanks for showing up on the video also, man.
Thank you for letting me show off my beautiful wardrobe.
And his children won't let him shave that.
Yeah, I gotta do that. I did something that should not be on video. There was a reason my face was covered for 25 years.
I say that all the time too. Yeah, this right here doesn't work for anybody. It just it was the bear.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm gonna go ahead and go to a wrap up. I'm gonna put you back in the green room for a few moments while I do so. Is that okay with you?
Perfect. Thank you, Jason.
Awesome. Love you, John, and we'll talk to you in a sec.
Bye, everybody.
There you have it, Jon Absey, the first and original Utah Jazz Bear. We get to hear the full story here, but most importantly, Jon Absey, a man of honor and integrity with a heart the size of the universe. I love this guy. Thank you so much for joining us here on Always the Journey TV. Be sure to subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button. If you have any questions, please throw them in the comments. I will do my best to answer them. And if I don't have the answer, John will. So again, thank you so much for dedicating your time on the show as well. Much love. And we will throw up an outro. Take care. Thanks for joining us.